The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, we are in an odd spot. We don't usually do this kind of thing where we go live, but we are anticipating going live to Northern Virginia, where Caps and Wizards owner Ted Leonsis and the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, are expected to announce a plan to build an arena on the Potomac Yard site for the Caps and Wizards to play in, plus development around the area, a $2 billion project, as it is being called in the Washington Times today. And, it's ramped up very quickly because this has been talked about for a while, and then yesterday there was some reporting that they may be getting close to a deal, and then boom, late yesterday afternoon was, hey, news conference tomorrow to announce this. Now, we're still a ways away from this happening. Okay, it doesn't mean that whatever is announced today by Ted Leonsis and Glenn Youngkin is going to necessarily happen. And it's a been there, done that for me, going back to when we first started sports radio in Washington, the spring and summer of 1992, when then Governor Doug Wilder of Virginia had a plan with Jack Kent Cooke to build a football stadium at Potomac Yard. And there was opposition from area residents led by Congressman Jim Moran, and they successfully chased it away. And that's why the stadium, the stinky stadium that it is now in Landover, Maryland, because Cooke couldn't get it built at Potomac Yard. Now, the landscape was a little different. There was no metro station there, so Potomac Yard would have been a real traffic mess for football, which would obviously hold more than a hockey and basketball arena where you're talking about 20,000 people. You're talking about 78,000, which was the original size of FedEx Field or Jack Kent Cooke Stadium when it opened. And they were concerned about all the traffic and problems that they would have just for the, 8 football games that they would play there every year. Now you're talking about 82 nights with the Caps and the Wizards playing their games there, not to mention concerts that could take place and other things that the venue would be used for. And then, you have the other side of this, which is Washington, D.C. And if you're old enough, you remember the riots that took place in that area after the assassination of Martin Luther King in 1968. City blocks were burned out, literally burned to the ground. And it took essentially 30 years to revitalize that when Abe Pollin made the decision to move his Capitals and Wizards from the Capitol Center, which he built in 1973, which is funny, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Capitol Center, which was built for $15 million and put up, I think, in 15 months. And that at that time, when he built it, Abe had wanted to build in D.C., but just couldn't get a deal done. So he built in Landover. And then by the time the 2000s or the late 90s rolled around, they were ready to move. And he did move, and he got it finally where he wanted it in Chinatown. And it did a lot to revitalize the area. Restaurants, shops, all kinds of commerce built up around the arena, which was really the great intent of that. And it really, really did a lot for the city of Washington, D.C. And it was a wonderful place to go for many years for games and concerts. And then in recent years, there has been a lot of crime in that area. And because the district is having trouble recruiting police officers, there wasn't really enough police presence around, still isn't. And Ted has been forced to hire private security, and even that's not enough. We've had carjackings and shootings at the time of games recently. And also Ted has complained about his office, hearing the loud music of buskers outside his office. The area is not what it was when it opened in 1997. And, that arena was state-of-the-art when it did open in 97, but now it's one of the oldest in the league. And we had some great events to get it going. We had the NBA draft there in 1999. The NBA All-Star Game took place in 2001. It has become a great area. But it looks like now there's an announcement coming, and here it is from Potomac Yard. It is the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, Ted Leonsis, announcing a plan. Here we go.
And the people on the stage are about to tell you all about it. So with that, I will turn it over to the 74th governor of the Commonwealth, Governor Glenn Youngkin.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you and good morning. Okay, folks, I'm not sure I could be more excited to come together this morning and have the executive order that I passed last night for sunshine on this chilly morning actually happen. I saw a gentleman out front and I said, "How's the coffee?" And he said, "Hot." And I said, "That's the way it should be." There are so many people to say thank you to this morning, so many that I am almost positive that I will forget someone. And so as we just have a giant group hug for everyone here, let me say thank you. Thank you for the tremendous effort that's gone in to getting ready for this morning. And I have to say, after many years of dreaming and many years of discussion, I am pleased to announce that right here in Alexandria's Potomac Yard, we have a plan to unleash a brighter, more extraordinary future. And as part of this amazing project, we will build a spectacular $2 billion sports and entertainment district. And this spectacular sports and entertainment district will be at the heart of the most vibrant innovation corridor in the world, a corridor that starts at Amazon HQ2 in Arlington and stretches through the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus and will find its anchor here in Alexandria with this amazing sports and entertainment district. The 9 million square foot district will feature the global headquarters for monumental sports and entertainment, an extraordinary state-of-the-art arena that will be the home to both the Washington Capitals and the Washington Wizards. And on top of that, it'll be the home to Monumental Sports Network Media Studio, the Wizards practice facility, a 6,000-seat performing arts venue, an expanded esports facility, and wait, and in addition, new retail, restaurants, a conference center, hotels, and residential and community gathering spaces. This is monumental. This visionary sports and entertainment development district will bring together entertainment, sports, and technology like nowhere in the world. This once-in-a-generation historic development will be the best place to live, work, raise a family, and watch hockey and basketball. It also represents an extraordinary economic opportunity. Over the life of this project, 30,000 new jobs and an estimated $12 billion of economic activity to be generated in the Commonwealth and in the city of Alexandria. And this was only made possible. It was only made possible through extraordinary teamwork. Teamwork that was between, yes, the Virginia's economic development team, Monumental Sports and Entertainment's team, the city of Alexandria, our administration, the General Assembly of Virginia, and JBG Smith. I especially want to acknowledge my friend Ted Leonsis. Ted, I remember when we sat together years ago, and discussed your vision where Monumental wouldn't just be the owner of great teams, but in fact, you would build through Monumental the most innovative, sports and entertainment company in the world, delivering the most comprehensive and the greatest fan experience. And Ted, that's exactly what you are doing. Virginia will not only be the best place to watch hockey, to watch basketball, but it will be the best place to innovate and press the envelope and what we can do together. The most innovative sports and entertainment district will be funded by the most innovative public-private partnership. Monumental Sports, the City of Alexandria, the Commonwealth of Virginia will all win together. I pledged that any project like this would first and foremost be good for the Virginia taxpayer. And that's exactly what this project represents. No upfront investment, harnessing the financial horsepower of the future incremental taxes and other revenues with an estimated $12 billion of economic contribution to Virginia and the city of Alexandria over the coming decades. Joining National Landing as part of Potomac Yard, this world-class entertainment district will be adjacent to our Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, opening the doors for unique partnerships between Monumental and Virginia Tech focused on entrepreneurship, sports analytics, immersive technologies, and innovative new businesses and media strategies. And on top of that, the economic contribution from this development will create further revenue streams to support education and transportation across the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's crystal clear. Virginia is leading on innovation. Already we have extraordinary infrastructure. We have business-ready sites. We have world-class education.
Tell you what, Rex, let's just keep this down and keep an eye on it. Give me the high sign when we see Ted, okay? So we can see, get what Ted has to say. Let me just recap a little bit what has happened now. And it's happened really in the last 12 hours, 15 hours, something like that. Report came out yesterday that there would be this news conference, which is sounding a lot more like a pep rally. This is not really a news conference. This is a pep rally, and this is selling by the governor and the mayor and officials in Virginia that they really want this to happen. And one of the first things that Youngkin said was that they are building a $2 billion facility. And I think one of the reasons he wanted to get that out early was the D.C. is desperately trying to hang on. Now, as was reported, Ted Leonsis asked the city for $600 million in improvements to Capital One Arena. And the cost is reportedly $800 million, what they have to do. It doesn't seem that way. For me, anyway, it seems like a new arena. But at 26 years old, it's one of the oldest in the NHL and the NBA, and those improvements need to be made. And so I guess he was willing to kick in $200 million of his money and wanted $600 million from the city. And nothing happened until this news conference was announced. And last night, the city made a last-ditch effort, and they say, okay, we give you $500 million for this, and we're going to beef up security around the arena and some other promises. And I think what is happening here is Virginia is saying, $500 million. We're going to do $2 billion, and there's going to be a partnership here between us and Ted. I mean, for what Ted wants to do, this really can't be done in the District of Columbia. There's just no room where Capital One Arena is to do this. And, you know, we're looking at development. They're talking about $12 billion pumped into the state from this. These are things that I don't think D.C. can compete with. But, again, it doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk it's going to happen. That's why you're hearing this overselling that's going on from the Virginia governor and the mayor of Alexandria. They are pushing as hard as they can to get people enthused about this. Now, I've spent most of my life in Montgomery County. Virginia, to me, for most of my life, has been a foreign land. I can't remember the times I've gone there specifically to go to a restaurant or a show or anything like that, maybe to visit somebody. So it's not a regular place for me to go. It's not that much of a difference in distance from my house in Germantown to this proposed site at Potomac Yard. You basically stay on the George Washington Parkway just past the airport and you're there. But it also seems like it's really going to take away from all the good that had happened in the last 26 years with the Capital One Arena in the city. The Washington was really, that area was revitalized by that, and there's been some regression there for sure. But if that goes away, what happens? Does that revert back to what it used to be? I mean, it's heavily crime-ridden now. What happens in 10 years from now when Georgetown's playing basketball there? And by the way, they had 3,000 people for Georgetown's game last night. What happens when there's only a handful of concerts that take place and there's big competition from this new arena in Virginia to get the big acts to come there? I mean, where does the city go from? I mean, this is a huge blow to the city if this happens, and a huge blow to the businesses that have all sprung up around the arena. Restaurants, hotels, shops, things like that. Those business people, and they're, I'm sure, banging on Muriel Bowser's door saying, hey, well, what about us? What about the protection here? And she's offering less than what Ted asked for at this point, where you're hearing this kind of leverage coming from the state of Virginia. I'm not sure how D.C. is going to be able to do this. But again, and I'll go through this more in the next hour, when this deal was announced in 1992 by the then Virginia Governor Doug Wilder and Jack Kent Cooke, who was looking to move his Redskins. They promoted it in the same way. There was a very, very big news conference that they had, and Cooke was an irascible, a salesman his whole life. We are going to turn this area into a silk purse from a sow's ear. That's the kind of way he rolled. And there was a congressman named Jim Moran who said, no, you're not. And he was able to rally the citizens, and they kept it out. And that's why they built FedEx Field where it is in Landover. So, things can happen. It can be prevented. And they're not supposed to break ground on this until 2025. So there is a window of time where there still could be a deal done with the district. And the one thing about the Cooke deal, now I don't know how the specifics are in this, sounds like it's a signed deal. Cooke had an agreement, a verbal agreement, and that's why another reason it fell through. Here's Ted Leonsis talking to the media at Potomac Yard.
The concept of building super communities. And right here in the DMV, we have the opportunity to be one of the 10 most important communities on the planet. And what defines a super community? Simple. That you have an international and functioning, very busy airport, that you have access to public transportation, that you have technical infrastructure so that you can innovate and have an open platform for businesses, for academics, that you house great universities and research universities. Thank you, Virginia Tech, for my tie. Now, I'm a proud graduate of Georgetown University, very close to here. I love Georgetown University, but I also love Virginia Tech and George Mason. We manage the George Mason operation for them in the sports area. We have a great relationship with George Mason over the years. We understand the importance of being able to graduate the young and have them graduate and want to be in the community and stay. Waterways are incredibly important. When I first came to this site and stood on top of the roof of the building next door and looked over, we forget the power of having two rivers flow right into this community. And iconic real estate is incredibly important. We have access, you can see the Washington Monument from here, Washington, D.C. The border's 1.5 miles from here. We're only 4 miles from our existing arena, the Capital One Arena. Capital One, Rich Fairbank, one of our partners, headquartered here in Virginia in Tyson's Corner. And our commitment will be to build really iconic, fan-centric businesses, and we want to unite this community. What we are about is putting unity in a community and really helping this region bring up to its total promise. And so with that, I really want to say thank you to our governor. The Commonwealth of Virginia, I have a long history with. Senator Warner is here. My license plate used to be W8. I thought ironic always because of Alex Ovechkin's number. We got America online right here in Virginia. And the first meeting that Jeff Bezos took when he left DHR in New York was he drove to Virginia. And he came and visited us at America Online. It's no secret that he was wowed because 80% of the internet's traffic was flowing through Virginia. And later, he really made this area central to what the new economy is about. And so we have so much to be proud of and so much to be grateful for. The City of Alexandria, our partners at J.B. Smith, and all of our friends at Virginia Tech, thank you for making this day possible. The collaboration, though, is way beyond business. It is rooted in our commitment to the entire DMV. And our media market, where we just bought our regional sports network, it's now called the Monumental Sports Network, it goes from Richmond, Virginia, all the way to Delaware. So we were talking about Amtrak goes all the way through, and I think maybe we should even be acquiring Delaware because it is a big, big media market. But that is an important concept that our games, our brands, really start in Richmond and go all the way past Baltimore. So that notion of community and DMV really is what our business is about. That's the higher calling for sports. That is the higher calling on everything that we do, to build these legacies through winning championships, from doing the right things in the right way by our fans so that people can appreciate the community that they live in. It's no secret that this great airport here is considered Washington National, yet it's in Virginia. You have so much contribution to what this community is about. And our moving here, if all of this goes as planned, we will still be a big, big part of the entire DMV. That is our goal. That is our commitment. Create jobs, pay taxes, hire people from Virginia Tech and George Mason. We want to leave much more than we take. And that is really the promise that my family and everyone in our community will continue to do. We want to build, though, the most fan-friendly experience. We have built our brand and our business, and frankly, I've tried to build my career on being first, on being an innovator. And when we first came out here and I saw 70 acres and the ability to start with a clean slate and imagine what would an arena 30 years from now need to be built and be served, and to build a digital-first experience. It really is a very, very romantic, but also pragmatic vision that we have that we can't do anywhere else. This place for people is one of a kind. I mean, I got goosebumps again, came here a week ago, and just looking out at all of the expansion capabilities on water, with the airport across the street, and a brand new metro stop. I mean, that primordial set of ingredients can really create what we think we can build, really the exemplar new experience, and we'll see, we'll be very on trend because this is what we'll have to do in professional sports. I also want to say that, that while we'll be playing here in a state-of-the-art arena, And we are going to be very, very focused on restaurants, students and innovators and community spaces, and the neighbors. I'm very, very, very focused on being a good neighbor. I think that that's an important part of our legacy, to be very, very cognizant of what goes on in the community. I come to the office every single day. I walk around the neighborhood. I walk around the arena. I think having that personal touch is vital to make sure that you are listening, that you're hearing, that you're empathetic and understand what is going on in the community. We will be building our network here, and I think that that's important, that our media work, especially with Virginia Tech. We've made commitments to be the leading edge, analytic, data-centric business, and that will happen here. I also need to explain to everybody that we own Capital One Arena. We also own the Washington Mystics. Women's sports is transcendent. I watch Virginia Tech women's basketball now all the time. They have a great team. My belief is that at Capital One Arena that we can host women's sports. We've invested $200 million in the last 10 years in keeping Capital One world class as an arena. And our intention is to expand here and keep Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. a great place. We'll host concerts there. We'll host concerts here. We'll have a 6,000-seat entertainment performance center here. And this community is so vibrant. You just have to look at other great cities. New York, have arenas in Brooklyn and Long Island and Manhattan. They're all working. That's what our promise is here, that we can be an economic engine. We can employ all of the people who work at the arena in Washington, D.C. We can create new jobs, new tax base out here, and really work to make the promise of Virginia and what our governor spoke about, but also we have a responsibility to do a great job and continue to invest in Washington, D.C. Hold me accountable. I feel that that is not just words. When you own a professional sports team, you have annual meetings every game. I can tell you by the moment, we're down 12 points after the end of the first period. Sell the team, get out, you're terrible. We have a great win, it's like you're the greatest. So I understand being held accountable. And I promise, and my commitment to you is we will do the right things in the right way to all the communities that we serve. So thank you so much for the confidence. Mark, we started a relationship almost 25 years ago. Glenn and I have known each other, worked with each other for a long time. This is a fantastic state. You're also the only state, the most successful state without professional sports teams. So I think this is a big, big moment that kind of is a capstone for that journey on making Virginia a major driver and a major part of this whole new economy where sports and technology are the big drivers of what a community stands for. Thank you. I look forward to working with all of you.
All right, that was Ted Leonsis, owner of the Caps and the Wizards, jointly announcing with the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, a $2 billion project that will begin, and they did not announce, at least as I heard, a groundbreaking date, but would open, I guess, by 2027, which is when Ted can get out of his lease at Capital One Arena. And there will be an entertainment center there, as you heard, 6,000 seats. There'll be a practice facility. And the question is, can D.C. make a last-ditch effort to keep him? The reports were last night that the city had offered $500 million in improvements to Capital One Arena. That seems to pale in comparison to what's being offered here and what has apparently been agreed to between Leonsis and Youngkin to build this facility in Northern Virginia. But again, we'll go through the history of what happened when Jack Kent Cooke tried to move the Redskins to essentially the same place 31 years ago and how he was chased out of town. We'll see if that happens. There were a couple of protesters I saw outside. One said houses, not hockey. Another one said no taxpayer dollars for billionaires. If there's enough support to make that happen, we'll see. But right now, this looks like a circumstance where they're going to try and go as full steam ahead as they can, and that I guess if there's no last minute deal, we're seeing maybe 4 more years of Caps and Wizards in downtown D.C. Now, Leonsis did say that they will keep Capital One going, that I guess the Mystics are going to play there and that they're going to have concerts there. But is that going to be enough to sustain that facility? You're losing 82 nights a year between the Caps and the Wizards playing there. That's a lot of nights on the calendar. And I just don't know if businesses can survive around there with occasional concerts and Mystics games. And Georgetown basketball, which again drew 3,000 people last night. More to say on this coming up, more reaction. Also a historical look back on what happened when Jack Kent Cooke tried to move there 31 years ago. Much more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. If you're just jumping in your car, we just carried a live news conference from Potomac Yard. The governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, and the owner of the Caps and the Wizards, Ted Leonsis, addressing the media in really pep rally style. Maybe not Ted as much, because Ted always likes to act like he's the smartest guy in the room and he's ahead of everybody else and yada, yada, yada. But the governor, man, he was full of piss and vinegar today. I mean, he said right off the bat, this is a $2 billion project, a spectacular $2 billion sports and entertainment facility at the heart of the most vibrant area, 9 million square feet, blah, blah, blah. And, that this is going to pump $12 billion into the economy. It's going to create 30,000 jobs. Those are the things you say when you want this to go through. And Ted has said that, we're still going to be very much a part of the whole DMV. We're going to put the Mystics games at Capital One Arena. There'll be concerts there. But over here, oh, boy, we got a facility here that's going to be cutting edge, and we're going to be giving the fans a great experience. And it's going to invigorate the entire DMV. Well, when Abe Pollin built Capital One Arena and opened it in 1997, that was an area that was nowhere near what it would become. Now, unfortunately, it's become crime-infested now, and there's just not enough police officers that the district has been able to get out there. So there's been things that gone on, and it's not as an attractive an area as it used to be. But that doesn't mean it can't be brought back, and there can't be more things around it that can make it a better area. But they're running. And you know what this smacks of? And I know that there are going to be minorities who are going to write these things and say these things. One of them I know very well, Kevin Blackistone, I think has already expressed this on Twitter. This is now resembling white flight. This is what happened to Washington, D.C. in the late 1960s after the riots. Martin Luther King was killed, assassinated, and people moved out to the suburbs. And while you look at Northern Virginia as maybe diverse, it ain't as diverse as the city of Washington, D.C. I grew up in Montgomery County, and I now have friends that grew up in Northern Virginia. We never went to each other's places. If you grew up in Northern Virginia, that's where you stayed. And when you grew up there, you bought a house there. Same thing in Maryland, Montgomery County for sure, that if that's where you grew up, that's where you live, no matter where you work. And we all went to Washington, D.C. for various things, whether it be games at RFK Stadium, and then later when Capital One Arena went there. I mean, even back to the days when I was going to the circus with my dad at what was Uline Arena and is now an REI near Union Station. D.C. was the place you went. And boy, if this is going to happen, and it sounds more and more like it is, then D.C. gets abandoned again. And it does not have the same kind of vibrancy that it had in the early 2000s. Again, we're hosting an all-star game there in the NBA. You had many, many events that have taken place at Capital One Arena over the years, not just games, but concerts and big events. And now this will totally, I think, devastate the area and put back many of the things that the city council and the mayor have wanted to put in place to keep the city going. And what they've come up with, what they said last night was a $500 million offer, and their last offer doesn't sound like that's going to work. Doesn't sound like that's something going to be accepted. Now, again, there are things that could still hold this up. And this does have to be approved by the state legislature, which is not a slam dunk. And we'll see if, like in 1992, when Jim Moran was successfully able to mobilize the citizens of that area to push back on Jack Kent Cooke building a stadium there, that maybe when the General Assembly meets, that they will not approve this. But the governor is firmly behind it. The mayor of Alexandria, as you heard, is firmly behind this. This is a monumental day, and boy, what a pun that is, really. But it's a monumental day for sports in Washington D.C. And if the Commanders, don't move to D.C., don't move back, I guess the one thing you can say about this is it almost guarantees that the Commanders won't wind up in Virginia, because this is where their money is being spent. And I think that it increases the chances that they wind up in Washington, D.C., that if the Caps and the Wizards move, then their district is certainly going to have to make a deal with Josh Harris to move the Commanders there. But for a while, I'm sure, at least for a couple of years, the only team that will be playing in Washington, D.C. is the Nationals. And, this kind of political stuff that we're seeing now here with the pushing back and forth, this happened, if you remember, back in 2004, so 18 years ago, when the Expos were going to move here, and there was a deal in place to build a stadium at the cost of $410 million for the city. It's amazing, talking about a $2 billion basketball and hockey complex. But at that time, $410 million, and there was big pushback led by Linda Kropp, who almost killed the deal. But, cooler heads prevailed, and we got the Nationals here, and the rest is history. So, I don't know. As someone who grew up in this area, someone in my mid-60s, it feels sad to me, but, it's the way things go when money is on the line, and this is a big financial deal for Ted. And it's big for Glenn Youngkin as a politician to get this done for Virginia. So, as Ted said at the end, it's the only state without a professional team. I have a couple of more follow-up thoughts as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Got Tony coming up at 11 o'clock today. He may have some thoughts on this. Mike Wilbon excoriated Ted Leonsis last night on PTI. With the expected announcement, which has come within the last hour. You heard it live here on ESPN 630. The announcement from the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, and Ted Leonsis that the Caps and the Wizards will be moving to a $2 billion complex at the Potomac Yard site in Alexandria, just past National Airport. There's a new metro stop there. And look, this is the way professional sports are going. Jerry Jones, I think, was among the first to do this. You build a stadium in a spot, and the city springs up around it. That's where the money is. So that's what the plans are. There have been some artist renderings released of what they're going to do. It looks beautiful. It looks like an entire city that's around this complex. It's right on the water, on the Potomac River. And it looks very nice. And if you live in Virginia, this is really good for you because it's easy to get to. You don't have to fight a lot of the traffic. If you live where I do, in Montgomery County, not so much. But there is going to be a metro stop there, which there was no metro stop when Jack Kent Cooke attempted to put the Redskins there in 1992 and was chased away. There are two hopes to keep the teams in D.C., but I just get the sense from listening to this news conference. That was, part of the intent of the news conference too, which also served as a pep rally, that it's too far down the road for D.C. to save it. And based on what's proposed here to be built, there's just no room in D.C. for this to happen, that they will have this 6,000-seat entertainment complex there, so you can have smaller concerts in the same spot. You can't have major concerts with 20,000 people every night. And of course, you have the Caps and the Wizards chewing up 82 dates with their home games there. So there's that. But, it's and I always look at things through the prism of history here and how things have changed in the last 50 years. We, just had the 50th anniversary of the Capitol Center being built in 1973. And that was at a time when a deal could not be done with the district. Abe Pollin tried to build an arena in D.C., couldn't get it done and said, well, I'll just do it myself. And he did it in Landover, Maryland, which, even if you lived in Montgomery County, where I grew up in Chevy Chase, how was a schlep around the Beltway? That was a lot of exits to get out to Landover to see the games. But, it was the first of its kind in the area. We didn't have a big arena. That's what kept hockey and basketball out of here for all those years. The Bullets were moving from the 9,000-seat Civic Center in Baltimore into a 20,000-seat complex, which had a telescreen and skyboxes, and that was state-of-the-art. And then, and we're going to hear from Wilbon coming up here from PTI at 10 o'clock. But in many ways, Wilbon played a big role in getting the arena built in D.C. Not that, he necessarily made it happen with this column, but I'll give you the wheels that went in motion after it. This was probably 1993 or 1994, and Wilbon was covering the NBA, so he was all over the league. He was at every arena in the NBA at that time, and he said, look, the new arenas are being built downtown, and there's commerce around there. There's restaurants, hotels. This dump is out in the middle of Landover. There's nothing around there. If you want to go out after the game, you can go to maybe a Denny's across the street, but there's nothing there. And Abe got really mad about that, and he took out a full-page ad in the Washington Post just killing Wilbon, saying, how dare he say that about my arena? And then not that many months later, Abe announced that he was breaking ground in Washington, D.C., and he did, and he had to fight very hard to get through some obstacles to make it happen. The city paid for the infrastructure, but he paid to build the arena from his own pocket. And when it opened in 1992, it was really a great thing. And you could take the Metro there, which you could not do to the Capitol Center, and you could go out before or after the game. In fact, Rex Minturn, you're more part of the market for this new place. You like going downtown to games, right?
Yeah, I was on the steps of Natural Portugal the night the Caps won the Stanley Cup, and now you're moving to this soulless development.
Yeah, well, there'll be restaurants and shops there, but yeah, you won't have the monuments and all the things that go around with the city. And will you and your friends? You live in Maryland. Will you and your friends, you think, make a trip there? You'll be older by the time it opens. So
I mean, no, the when I go to game, I mean, the Wizards have been so bad, but we go to games and then go out in D.C. We're not going out now.
Not going out to an Applebee's after the game in Alexandria. Okay, and that's you got to keep that into account. I'm sure they have, and then they also have people like me who are older suburban people who don't want to sit in traffic for a 7:00 game. If there's a 7:00 tip-off on a Tuesday night for the Wizards, let's say, I'd have to leave my house at 5 to get there, and sit in ridiculous traffic. Plus, well, I guess by the time it opens, they'll finally finish that George Washington Parkway construction, which is supposed to take 2 years. But, I mean, there's just so many obstacles to doing that. And what it does to the city of Washington, D.C., it to me is a big step backward. And I know a lot of people are going to pat Ted on the back as a visionary, and this is all part of the new world, and you have to have like an esports place there, and they're going to have their television studios there, all the things that go along. And, we're getting to a point where we're probably going to be streaming everything. So that's going to be a big part of the whole, thing, that everything they do will be streamed and you'll pay for it or however they do it. But man, it's just a big change, and it's bad for DC. And DC had made so many steps to move forward and to get us to be the vibrant city that it is. So many people now living in Washington, D.C. Millennials like to live in cities. That's a city that they live in. And the Caps and Wizards maybe isn't going to make that big of a change, but you also have, because people work at home, you don't have as many people working in D.C. anymore. So that's another big factor in all this. Change is always hard, and I don't embrace change very well. But I will say this: the previous two arenas that were built were embraced. That was wow. Okay, Capitol Center, yeah, it's in Landover, but at least we're getting a major league complex here. When they moved to downtown, which was then the MCI Center, yeah, there were some people who had made a habit of going out to Capitals and Wizards games at the arena. But to be downtown in a brand new place, which didn't have the creaky old telescreen, but had the big screens, the big modern screens where you could watch replay and all the amenities and the boxes on the level, not the skybox. That was a big thing. And I'll tell you this. Because it was on a Metro stop and they saw how many people were going to the games by Metro, that was a factor in getting the Nationals here. They knew that if you had a Metro stop, which we did with Potomac, with Navy Yard, the Navy Yard stop right near the new stadium, that would help to get it. So there's so many things that happened because of what happened here in 1997 with the opening of that arena, and now it being basically abandoned for Virginia. It kind of makes me sad. We'll get to more on this as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Tony's got a show today at 11. I don't know how much time he will be spending on this, but this will dominate the next hour for us, and has in the last hour. We carried the news conference live. The governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, and Ted Leonsis, owner of the Caps and Wizards, announcing a plan for a $2 billion complex to be built at Potomac Yard. And it looks like, if all goes well for them, they would break ground in 2025, and then the arena would debut for the 2028 season. So I guess October and November of 2028, you would have the Caps and the Wizards starting their seasons there. A lot can happen between now and then, but the Hail Mary from the district doesn't seem to be very promising at this point. Ted had asked for $600 million from the city to improve Capital One Arena, and nothing really seemed to happen until last night when the district came up and said, okay, here's a $500 million offer from public financing. We're not going over that. This is our last and final offer. Well, when he's got that kind of leverage at that point, the news conference had been scheduled, and you're offering less than what he's asking for, I don't really see how this can be worked out, but, maybe you can. And there's another hope, if you want them to stay in the district, is that this will be rejected by the state legislature. There'll be enough opposition from the city. The mayor of Alexandria got up at this really what was more of a pep rally than a news conference to cheer them on that he wants this for Alexandria. Residents of the area, can they put up enough of a fight to prevent this from happening, remains to be seen. But how this is going to be done, there's some details in the Washington Post as to how this is going to work. And this is, a lot of this is above my pay grade, but it's buying and selling and who's going to control what. But they announced this as a partnership between the state, the city of Alexandria, and Ted Leonsis. And this will put money, I guess, in everybody's pocket. The governor is promising 30,000 jobs because of this. And also, Ted, in his remarks, said that it doesn't necessarily mean that the Capital One Arena becomes a ghost town. They're talking about making it into a flexible arena that could host between 10,000 and 20,000 fans, with the Mystics relocating there. I guess they would cut it down. They could probably... Yeah, you put tarp over the upper deck, which is what the Mystics did at one time when they played there. So they would go back there and play, and Georgetown would play there, and they would have some concerts. But, boy, I just don't see how they would have enough revenue to keep it going, plus all the businesses around there. How many people are you going to get to come to your place when you don't have that many events there? And, the Mystics drawing 7,000 or 8,000 tops, Georgetown 3,000, maybe a few nights a year with huge concerts. But this new complex is also going to be hosting concerts as well. And then a point that Rex made during the break, which I think is really a good point, basketball. Basketball is a city game. They say the world's most famous arena is Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden is in the heart of New York City. It's right across from Penn Station, 34th and 7th. And that is kind of like the mecca of basketball. That's the place where big games are played. And, yeah, the Pistons, when they moved their arena out to the suburbs, they were among the early teams to do that. The Atlanta Hawks did that. They moved. The Omni was built in the suburbs, and now I was just there this past weekend. They play in State Farm Arena, which is a beautiful state-of-the-art place. It's right in downtown Atlanta. People can go from work right to the game, and that's why you see many of the shots of the crowd over the years at Madison Square Garden, they're all wearing ties. They didn't go home. They came from work. And, you could have some people, I guess, to go from D.C. to Alexandria. It's not that far. But if you have to go home and come back, it's not the same thing. And so Wilbon, who I think was instrumental in getting Capital One built when he ripped Abe in a column that he wrote in the Post for continuing to have the teams play at Capitol Center, and Abe eventually, not with a nod to Wilbon because he was really angry at Wilbon, took out a full-page ad in the Post to rip him, but eventually said, yep, we got to build in D.C., and announced in 94 or 95 that they were building there, and it opened in December of 1997. This was Wilbon last night on PTI, and I think this was unscripted. I think they were talking about something as they were wrapping up the show, and he decided to go off.
But this revelation that Ted Leonsis and Monumental Sports are going to move the Wizards out of the city, the NBA, a city sport, out of Washington, D.C. to Virginia, that is awful. I'm just hearing about this, the reporting in the Washington Post. You're going to take the city sport out of the city, turn your back on Washington, D.C., and go to Virginia? Really? What does that say to your fan base that has been loyal despite 0 years of contention for that franchise for a championship? Really? There must be more to this than I'm missing.
No, the more came today, when almost exactly what you outlined is going to happen, Wilbon. They have announced plans to build there. And, Ted started talking about championships. Well, you don't need plural for that because you've only had one. That's with the Capitals. And you haven't come close with the Wizards. Getting to the second round is not championship. So, I agree 100% with what he said about basketball. And basketball in Alexandria, to me, is not the same as basketball in Washington, D.C. Now, I found this on YouTube, and this goes back over a year. Remember when Dan Snyder still owned the team? I think at that point they were the Washington football team. They may not have been named Commanders yet, and he was looking around for a new stadium, and he and his guy Jason Wright were touring various places. It looked like a setup thing that they had informed TMZ that they were going to be looking at the Los Angeles complex that they have out there, and that there was an offer from Virginia of $1 billion to come build there. And then Virginia realized, wait a minute, we're bidding against ourselves. Nobody wants this guy. So we'll lower it to $300 million. And then that went to the state legislature and said, no, we're not going to do that. So they were without a stadium. But this goes back to a report that Eric Flack did. And Eric Flack has really been out in front on a lot of the stadium stuff on Channel 9. This is a report from well over a year ago when Virginia was offering $1 billion for then owner of the team, Dan Snyder, to move to Virginia, to move the team and build a stadium out there. And in this report, he looks back on the failed attempt by Jack Kent Cooke in 1992 to move to essentially the same spot where the plan is for the Wizards and Caps to move for the start of the 2028-29 season. This again, Eric Flack on WUSA about the Jack Kent Cooke attempt.
In 1992, a hug and a handshake between Washington Redskins owner Jack Kent Cooke and Virginia Governor Doug Wilder appeared to have brought the team to Northern Virginia.
You guys had a press conference announcing the stadium.
Precisely.
In Virginia.
And for good purposes. All is fair in love and war.
After months of secret negotiations between the two friends, Cooke agreed to leave the district and popular but out-of-date RFK Stadium for a brand new facility built on an old railroad yard in Alexandria known as Potomac Yards. But within months,
Jack Kent Cooke Stadium will not be built.
Alexandria residents had sacked the plan. Wilder, now dean of the School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University, blames one man.
Ran around almost like Chicken Little. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. That's why we don't have a stadium that we would own in the state of Virginia today. Congressman James Moran.
Yes, I did everything I could to kill that rotten deal.
Here's how. Wilder only had a verbal agreement with Cooke before holding that infamous press conference for a stadium that never happened.
Here, in truth, will be made a silk purse out of a sow's ear.
Wilder said Cooke agreed to buy the land from the state and build the stadium at his own expense, and even claimed the owner said he would sign the stadium title over to Virginia after 20 years. Cooke only had one condition.
He said, Doug, I don't want to have any publicity associated with this at all, other than the fact that we're going to be doing it.
But Moran, who served as mayor of Alexandria before being elected to Congress, made sure Wilder's stadium deal would not go unnoticed.
I will use every ounce of strength and whatever ability I have and determination to kill this idea.
Alexandria residents packed public meetings to speak out against the plan, citing traffic and quality of life concerns.
And what we will do is stop you, Mr. Cooke, from building the stadium at Potomac Yards.
Moran told me he also opposed the financial details of the stadium plan. He claims Cooke demanded the lion's share of the tax revenue while refusing to pay for public safety expenses, like traffic control on game days.
After it got to that point where people were arguing about it, Jack said, guess what? Forget it.
I'm sorry that Doug doesn't have a cushy free seat in the owner's box to watch the Redskins games, but the reality is that Jack Kent Cooke and the Redskins organization was going to try to take advantage of the city of Alexandria.
Now, 30 years later, a role reversal. Moran, a government consultant, supports a new plan approved by the Virginia legislature to sell $1 billion in bonds to help Commanders owner Dan Snyder finance a Northern Virginia stadium, just not in Alexandria. As for Governor Wilder, he thinks Snyder, not taxpayers, should shoulder the cost of a new stadium, wherever Snyder decides to put it.
That's his problem.
Let him deal with it.
If he wants to. He doesn't have to deal with it at all. He can sell the team. Someone else can deal with it.
Oh, in fact, that's what happened, thank God. The team has been sold, and it is now up to Josh Harris and his group what happens there. But that's a very good historical piece that was done by Eric Flack on Channel 9 well over a year ago. And here we are now with Ted Leonsis making a similar move to take the Caps and the Wizards to Northern Virginia. Now, this is the detail that the Post has on how this is going to work. Under the deal, Bethesda-based developer JBG Smith would sell the Potomac Yard land it owns to a Virginia Stadium Authority, which would lease the property to Monumental. Two people briefed on the proposal said the authority would lease Monumental the complex for 35 years, not including construction. The new complex would be next to a recently opened metro station, which is serviced by the blue and yellow lines and just south of the graduate innovation campus that Virginia Tech is set to open next year. This is all part of the grandstanding that went on about how great it was that we're going to have these graduate students and we walk across the street and go work as part of the 30,000 jobs that this is supposed to create. Look, things change. Things can be made happen, as you just heard in that report, that this doesn't go through. The deal doesn't go through. But I don't know if there's anybody like a Jim Moran who's going to lead the charge to keep him out. You also have to remember, now this is another historical point that's important to point out here. Ted Leonsis is a much more sophisticated businessman than Jack Kent Cooke. Now, Cooke, at his time, was tremendous at this. I mean, he owned the Lakers, he owned the Kings, he owned the Forum. He sold all of that, and he sold it because he had, at that time, the world's most expensive divorce. I think it was like $150 million. And then he reassumed control of the Redskins. Now, he had always been a majority owner of the team. But at the time, the NFL had a rule that if you owned an NFL team, you couldn't own franchises in other sports. So Edward Bennett Williams was the managing partner of the team. He made decisions that an owner would make about the Redskins, and Cooke was in Los Angeles running the Kings and running the Lakers and running the Forum. When he sold all that, he moved to Middleburg and took over control of the Redskins, and under the Jack Kent Cooke ownership, we had this incredible decade of 4 Super Bowl appearances in 9 years and 3 championships. And then Cooke, when he wanted to build a new stadium, as you heard Doug Wilder describe there, he didn't take into account a lot of details. He was a bombastic guy, and he just said, we're going to build here. This is a good spot. The governor and I made a deal, and this is where it's going to happen. and it didn't happen for a variety of reasons, including opposition from the citizens of the area. Will there be enough? I don't know. It's still now, even though it has been approved by Virginia lawmakers that this deal can happen, the state legislature still has to do that, still has to approve it. So there's more to come on this, and I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that maybe there can be some kind of an agreement made so as to keep the teams in the District of Columbia. But it just seems that with what's being drawn up in the proposals, once it gets past the legislature, if it does do that, bye-bye, and they move to Virginia, and generations, I guess, will just get used to it. I mean, we had the Capitol Center in Landover for 24 years, and going out to Landover to see a game was something that you did no matter where you lived. I mean, and when the Bullets were making their championship run, they had big crowds, but Capitol Center was never a big draw. And Capital One Arena, the 2 years that Michael Jordan played there, when I guess it was still MCI, he was selling out the building every night. When the Caps have established themselves with a great fan base there, and they sell out most nights. In fact, this is the first year, I think first year this year that they really have not sold out. But you had great crowds with red jerseys and all that. So is your fan base going to go to Virginia for that? We'll see. The Wizards are going to have to put together a much better team than they got right now, because this embarrassment of a team, I know it's 5 years down the road before this is going to open, but this embarrassment of a team, if they were to make a move now to Northern Virginia, they'd be drawn like Georgetown is now at Capital One, 3,000 people. So it's, I don't know. I understand progress, and I'm always resistant to it, but this just has a sickening feeling to it for me. Anyway, more follow-up tomorrow on the announcement that the Wizards and the Caps are due to move to Alexandria in time for the 2028 season, and we'll talk about that tomorrow and much more. Thanks to Rex Minturn for running the show. Thanks to all of you who listen. Tony is next. See you tomorrow, 9 a.m.